Today we're with Ambrose Duggan, who is a triathlon coach and endurance athlete.
Hey, Daryl.
Thanks for coming in.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Great. Oh, it's great. Looking forward to this one. Some mad stuff ahead.
Hopefully not too mad.
So, endurance athlete. Tell us, how did you begin? What was your journey? How did you first start into getting into a triathlon?
Well, I suppose what I do always say to people is, what I do say to people now is, don't go down the journey that I went down in terms of triathlon. So I would have very much went down, did a sprint triathlon, heard that there was this thing called an Ironman competition, and I says I'd go from 0 to 100 in terms of it. So I went over to, it was 2014, I went over to Wales. Ironman. I did my first Ironman over there, but came away with my tail between my legs because got a hard. If you want to learn a lesson about endurance, learn it on an Ironman course. And I was brought in on the sweeper vehicle in 2014. So it took me. The only good part of that race was I actually had raised money for charity, so the local cancer hospice here.
Okay.
So I raised about €4,000 for them. So that was the upside of it. So, but it just hadn't the training done. It just hadn't the fitness within the body. It's a bad step up to go from to do what I do. And I always tell anyone that I speak to now, it's always do it in incremental. It's like training. You build up, you allow your body to build up, but don't go from a sprint to a full distance Ironman.
And you did the full distance. And just for people who don't know what a full distance is, what
so what I tried to do in 2014 was I attempted to do the full distance over there, but as I said, it didn't work out. Now it has since worked out. So full distance Ironman. So an Ironman is a brand, it's a company, all right. So it's long distance triathlon. So they have middle distance, which is a half Ironman, and it is a business. It's a brand, but you get an experience with the brand, and that's what I'm all about.
Okay.
That's why I do so many of these events. So an Ironman is 100. It's 100. They call it 140.6 in miles. So that's what the distance is in miles. So you have a 3.8 kilometer swim, 180k on the bike, and you have a 42.2 kilometre marathon. And then a half Ironman is literally half that. It's say roughly 2 kilometre swim, 90k bike, and half marathon, 21k run. And you have a certain length of time. Most races are about 17 hours. So you have a cut-off, but you'd have intermittent cut-offs for the swim, the bike and the run. So you'd have to hit certain points on the bike to progress. And the time I went to Wales that time, in 2014, I missed that cut-off on the bike. So they take you off the course, basically, because they can't allow you to be out there all day either.
And what would you find was the hardest part of an Ironman? Is the swim the toughest?
Yeah, well, people normally find swimming is the barrier to the sport, because it's the one which causes the most nerves. It's the scariest part, like of any part of a race day. It's the one where you're, like, when you're on the bike, there's a certain distance between you and the athlete, etc. You have to keep for drafting, etc. The run is obviously the run, you have your own space. But when you're in the swim can be a pretty crazy place. The first race that I did in Wales, it was a mass start, so there was 3,000 of us that went into the water at the same time. So Ironman have now stopped that for safety reasons, which is right. So they bring you in at 5 or 6 at a time into the water, so you have a better time to get in and settle yourself. But you're still in. Like, I was in Valencia there a few weeks ago, and the swim was pretty crazy. Like, there was a lot of people in the water that probably hadn't open water swam all year, and they were under pressure, and you could tell them at the curling boys and stuff, they just hadn't the experience. So I've been punched, I've been kicked. It's the place which really makes people the most nervous, and there's no easy Ironman swim. Some are more challenging. Like Wales has always been a challenging swim. Florida, I've been over there a few times as well. Like, you're dealing with jellyfish, you're dealing with marine life, and so the swim is the barrier to most people getting into the sport, which it shouldn't be, but unfortunately it is for a lot of people.
Yeah, and how do you train for a jellyfish? I mean, you could
you can't. You just have to sight correctly. So sometimes a murky water is probably better because you can't see what's in ahead of you. So over in Florida, the water is crystal clear, so you see what's there. But a lot of people, they're too used to swimming in a pool, and they're too used to looking down at the line. You should be looking forward as a triathlete, and it's at least, if you can spot it, you can maybe swim around it, etc. But I've been caught a good few times with them, unfortunately.
Really? So again, it's the sighting is totally different. Like, open water swimming is different to pool swimming.
Oh, totally different to pool. Like somebody will have a certain speed doing an open water swim, and then you put them into a pool, and it'll be totally different because they have to push off the wall. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot to be said for a good push off the wall. If you have good, big, strong legs, you'll have a good push off the wall. But when you're open water, it's different.
Yeah. And just going back to how you first got into it, did you run or do a cycle, or
No,
did you
well, I
just...
would have been. When I was growing up, I was quite overweight, and I did martial arts with yourself for a long time, and I suppose I just kind of that kind of ran its course. I just did it for 20 years, and it just came to a natural end for me. And then I started getting into a little bit of cycling, and I remember my dad, God rest him, he was always a big cyclist, and he kind of gave me a love of cycling, and he taught me how to swim. But I remember I did my first Ironman with the breaststroke. I won 1 hour 50 and I got through it. So and so it's not the stroke I'd be recommending for anyone to do now. It's the front crawl. It's the more efficient stroke. But that would have been where I started. And then obviously, look, I'm not a small guy. Running probably isn't my biggest thing, but it's the one I probably struggle with the most. So swimming and the biking will be my strongest probably disciplines, I'd say.
Right. And how many Ironman have you done in both half and full?
I have completed 12 full distance Ironmans. So, and then I have completed, just with Valencia, the last one, I've completed 16 half distance Ironmans. So that's the official brand of ones. I've done a few other distance races over the years, but for my own record and for my social media, I leave it at those numbers. So they're the numbers that I count. And they're full completed races.
So what are you doing? Maybe are you doing one Ironman a year, or?
Well, last year I had a bit of a goal last year. So I did 4 full distance Ironmans last year, and I did 2 in the space of 28 days. So I had a bit of a challenge last year. So I was trying to get to the number 12. So there's the Ironman World Championships in Kona that happens every year. So that's the World Championship. So to obviously qualify for that, you need to obviously attain a certain time, etc. Now, I'm not putting myself down, but I know my ability. I'm like, the qualification in my time is about maybe 9.5 hours, and like I'm a 13-hour person, on a good day. So there is another thing that Ironman, where they like to reward certain athletes. If you complete 12 full distance Ironmans over a set period of time, you can get an automatic qualification to the Ironman World Championships in Kona. And that's why I wanted to get that done last year, because there was a lot of pressure getting to number 12. And I did 4 last year. I did Hamburg, Leeds, Barcelona and Florida. And I threw in, I think there was a 70.3 in America I did as well. So that was my main focus last year, to get to number 12. And then in November of this year, I can apply to, you apply to Ironman and you go to the World Championships in Kona, hopefully all going well in the next 2 years.
And does that mean you're in with all the top, like the Lucy Charles Barkley,
all the big athletes, all the proper names? Yeah, so it's going to be a trip of a lifetime, and it's going to be an experience of a lifetime for me.
Wow.
Yeah, so it normally takes about 2 to 3 years, by the time that they work through the system, etc. So I'm in no rush for it, because it's going to be probably one of the biggest things I'll have done ever in the sport. And sometimes the journey is better than the destination,
Yeah.
So firm believer in that. So,
and just like you said, you did 4 in a year. So that's a constant year of training.
Yeah, but I train continuously. So I train 12 months in a year. I don't have a kind of an off season. I have a season of time where I'd maybe take a little bit of a step back in the intensity, etc. But I'm always keeping a certain level of base training up. So I'm always keeping my levels up to that I can comfortably cycle 100k. I can comfortably cycle maybe 2 or 3k. Swim 2 or 3k, and then I'm comfortable with a half marathon, because that always allows me a solid base to kind of easily roll over into a full distance Ironman or 70.3. Like I'm doing a lot of 70.3s this year, and I'm only doing, and I don't mean only now, but it's just 2 full distance this year that I'm doing for. So
right, so it's a constant. And is there a tapering? Do you ease, or do you?
Yeah, so there's a plan. So there's a plan to it. So look, I'm a self-coached athlete. So I'm a level 2 triathlon Ireland coach and world triathlon coach. So that's something that I've only actually qualified in the last few weeks. So I'm very proud over that. So I'm also, obviously you have to do a level 1 first, and then you do your level 2, etc. So I'm a self-coached athlete, so I coach myself.
Okay.
So, so I don't coach. I don't have a coach. I coach myself, and I set my own plan, and that can be hard. It can be hard to coach yourself, because accountability is the big thing, and that's what a lot of people want with a coach. Is they want accountability. They want someone to hold a mirror up to them. So what I do is, if you look at my social media page, every Sunday night I put up my race numbers, and I put up what my numbers are for the week. So it's my accountability tool to myself. It's not about who likes it or who shares it or who engages with it, but it's about that I'm looking at that and I'm saying, right, I'm training for X, Y and Z, and there's no point me talking about Ironman, the sport, etc. when I'm off doing this sort of level of, of training. So I have to hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
And it's a great tool, because there's some days where you don't want to do it, where you don't want to train, and especially during the winter, like I have a gym at home, and it's hard to get into the gym. It's hard to train yourself, especially like this morning. I was up at 5:00 this morning training to get my training done, because I was coming over here this evening. So I've lost my evening too, but I don't mind that. I'm delighted. I'm happy to lose the evening. But it's from that perspective, I suppose, it takes a lot of discipline. And if anyone knows me from the town here, and particularly anyone in my old triathlon club or anything like that, they know that I'm a very dedicated person. And when I set my mind on something, I'm not going to give it up easily. It's like the time I went to Wales, 2014. I could have given up on that, and I could have said no. I could have said this isn't for me. But what I did is I went off to Mallorca. I got myself a win in Mallorca, 70.3, and then I went to Barcelona and I got my first full distance over there then.
Wow.
So it's about mindset. Like, mindset is a big thing when it comes to these, because your mind will give up before your body will give up. And you see that on race day. You see people, especially on the marathon, you see it in the late hours, you see people really struggling, and their mind gives up first before their body gives up.
And so you DNF'd on Wales.
I've DNF'd on a few. Sadly, I've DNF'd on 4. See, my social media page is very much all about the real version of triathlon, of Ironman. Do you know what I mean? Because you see people up there and they'll only put up this result, that result. Like, I'll talk openly about the races I DNF'd at. I DNF'd in Wales, Frankfurt, Lanzarote, and there was and Italy. So all for a multitude of different reasons over the years. So I have finished Wales, I have finished Frankfurt. I'm going to Italy this year. I'll get my reckoning in Italy this year, and then I'm going to Lanzarote next year.
So you're going to tackle them off.
Yeah, I'm ticking them off. I've 2 of them ticked off already. So, but like, if you look at the time in Frankfurt, I got heat stroke on the bike and I ended up in hospital. So it's not that wasn't about training. That was about acclimatization. I got caught out with the heat, and I ended up in hospital, which is a pretty scary place, when your wife gets a call to come that you're in the hospital in a foreign country. It's not what the call that anyone wants to get.
Yeah. So you do a training block, and obviously there's a lot of dedication that goes into training. You're preparing for an Ironman, you go there, and then you DNF. Mentally, what's that like?
Horrible. Yeah, absolutely horrible.
Like, you're rock bottom.
Yeah, like I remember the one in Frankfurt that was, I DNF'd twice in Frankfurt, actually. So the first time I DNF'd was because of heat stroke, right? And there was nothing I could do about that. That was a medical issue. But I remember the second time, I remember I was there, and I just knew my headspace I wasn't in the right headspace for it. And I DNF'd myself off the course. So I took myself off the course and had to walk up by the finishing line to get my bike, which is pretty soul destroying. And it's horrible, you know what I mean? Because like, you're seeing the celebrations of everyone, and you're seeing, and rightly so, everyone's deserved their medal, and it's a hard, lonely place to be, when you DNF at a race. But I have found that it stood to me. Like, if I'm doing 2 full distance this year, I'm going to Austria next month, and I'm doing the race over there. And if something happens and I DNF, it's not the end of the day. Like, there's no pressure on me anymore. I have my 12 full distance Ironmans. Everything after this is the icing on the cake.
Right.
And there's no pressure, but I would have had a lot of pressure before this, because I was building up to getting these 12 done, and it was just, pressure is not what you want to do. But I do find, since I've started coaching myself, my previous coach had a conversation with me, and he said to me, he pulled me aside one day, and he said to me, I actually think you're regressing, Ambrose, in your training. So of course, I thought this is very, God, I'm regressing. What, God? And he was like, yeah, I think you're going back the way. But at no point did a conversation happen where the plan was the problem, the athlete was the problem. And I've learned so much from coaching myself. I've been a coach now. It'd be like someone in my tri club, Midlands tri club, Mullingar, say that I was working with, and that they are going back the way. It's not the athlete. There was no conversation. Like, there was nothing about changing the plan. It was the plan that was the problem.
Yeah.
It was this. Because there's a lot of old mindsets in coaching and training. Like the days are gone of going out cycling 200k, long cycles. It's smart and it's quality. It's not quantity anymore. But there's still a few mindsets out there. And if you keep training an athlete for quantity, of course he's going to burn out. Of course he's going to be going back. Like every Ironman I did last year, I didn't cycle over 140k. Because the rest of it's just junk. It's quality. Better to have 140k of long cycles of quality as opposed to junk miles So when I started coaching myself, I took that mindset and I spent a lot of time figuring it out, making mistakes with myself, because it's so important to make your mistakes with yourself as opposed to any other athlete you'd be working with. And I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned, and I have a system now where I'm only getting better and better in the sport, and I'm getting older in the sport, and I'm getting stronger in the sport.
Okay.
You know, as opposed to someone saying to you years ago, God, you know, like there's this thing in society, the older you get, you know, the more you should regress, you know, and the more you should get slower, etc. Like the older I get, the stronger I'm getting, the fitter I'm getting, the healthier I'm getting, and that's what it's about.
Changing.
But I think it's about coaching yourself correctly, and those races that I coached myself before, the ones that I had with the previous coach, like I was never the problem. It was the program that I was on, and I can see that now in hindsight with my own, because athlete intelligence is very important. A lot of people don't have that. You know, like I had the athlete intelligence in Frankfurt to know my headspace wasn't in the right place, because I had a recent bereavement only 2 months before that. So my dad sadly passed away, but I should never have went to Frankfurt. You know, but hindsight is a great thing.
Yeah.
So I knew on the course my headspace wasn't there, but it wasn't my fitness. But it's important to have athlete intelligence to know when something's right and when something's wrong.
Perfect. And going back to your training block, so you train all year round, so you're kind of, I suppose you've got a really good base and you can just take it up. But if for someone, let's say I decided I was going to do like even a 70.3 or a full Ironman, what sort of a training program, like how many months, or what are you doing?
Yeah,
what do you recommend?
See, coaching isn't complicated, right? People will make, like I have a lot of people coming to me want to talk to me about coaching. Coaching isn't complicated. Coaching is very simple. People make it complicated because they're trying to justify their price tags, right? Coaching is simple, incremental blocks that are built week on week. So you have a block. You'd have a block of training, then you'd have a recovery week. Then you're building on that block, and it builds, and it all builds you to race day. It was like what I'd said before the camera had started. If I had said to you to go off and cycle 100k in the morning, you'd cycle it, but that's not to say you wouldn't come back with a muscle issue or maybe a microfracture or some, you know, a multitude of issues there. Or if I said to go out and run a marathon there, you'd probably get through it. But, you know, what would you do to maybe your body in the process? And but some athletes, social media is a little bit guilty of making endurance events simple and making them look easy. They're not easy. Like an Ironman is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. And then people talk about, Wales is the hardest, Lanzarote is the hardest. You know, they're all hard Ironmans, but there's no soft Ironman. You know, there's no easy Ironman. And if you don't have your base fitness there, then you're going to end up getting injured. You're going to end up getting an Achilles issue or a hamstring, or something's going to flare up because your body if your body doesn't have enough time to acclimatize to what you're putting it through, you're going to end up the other side of it, and you're going to end up injured. And that's what's going to happen. And unless your coach that you're working with understands that, and like I've spoke to a guy I was speaking with, I hope doesn't end up watching this, but he was off doing, he went to Copenhagen last year, and his coach had him out doing like 9-10 hour cycles. Crazy. Just junk miles. You know, it's like the only thing you need to be overtraining for is possibly to swim, because you could have a challenge in swim. Like I've had some swims and they've been absolutely glass, but I've had swims and you get out of it and you're thankful that you're out of it. You know, I sadly was down in Cork in 2023 and I went into the water there, and I shouldn't have went into the water, you know, but that's something not for the podcast here, but that was a very tragic event where 2 people sadly lost their life, and the water is a scary place. Yeah. You know, and like I went into that water, and that was probably the hardest 400 or 500 meters I ever had in my life swimming. Really? Yeah, it was a scary, scary swim. And then to come out, I remember I was on the run, and we'd heard then 2 people passed away, and like it's just like it's very sad to think that you're starting a race in the morning, and you know there's 2 people lining up on deck with you, and they don't come home. You know, because it's a competition. You know, it's an activity. It's fun. That's why I do it. It's for fun. You know what I mean? It's you know, and to think that something would happen and you wouldn't come home afterwards is, you know, it's terrible.
Yeah, most of them are kind of lost on the swim.
A swim, unfortunately, sadly, that's where most of the people pass away. Yeah, it's on the swim, and like it happens. Like, and it'll happen. Sadly, this year it happened in Texas. Yeah, there was a very fit, healthy young woman that passed away. Do you know what I mean? So, but see, a lot of people don't go and get themselves checked out. So, like if I said to you, Darryl, when was the last time you seen a cardiologist or a respiratory specialist? Yeah. Like you're looking at me smiling, nodding.
Yeah.
But
Actually, I did before Christmas.
okay, good.
Just
but
with her, but that's on,
yeah, but that's good. Yeah, and that's so important. But most people don't see that. Like I've gone to see a cardiologist. I've gone to see a respiratory specialist. Like I'm asthmatic, so it's important to stay on top of that from that perspective. But I think, I know some people have come into the sport and have had to leave because they've developed issues with their heart, and it's so important to stay on top of that. Like I seen a cardiologist and got a few tests done, and he said, "Come back to me in 5 years." That's perfect. That's all I want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, because some people, sadly, like I was in Marbella years and years ago, and there was somebody who passed away, and they had something like maybe 8 or 9 gels before they went into the water, like something crazy, you know. And then that ends up that if you have a problem with your heart, that amount of caffeine in your body, and there's the shock of getting into the water, and there's the nerves of getting into the water. Like if you're not used to it, like people will kick you, they'll punch you, they'll drag you down into the water, they'll swim over you, some people will. And that's why seeding yourself at a race is very important. It's very important to know your ability, and at best, definitely on the swim, we can all be guilty of it. We can overestimate our ability, and we can find ourselves in a pack that we're not able for. And next minute, they're on top of us, but the pack is also coming behind us to swim over you. And that can make you very nervous, you know, when you're not used to that environment, you know, and then you add all those stuff together. But the swim is sadly is the toughest part of the race, I think.
Wow. So what would you do? So when you're obviously bike is your thing. What's your sort of average on a bike, say, per week, just for your training block?
Well, again, I suppose it kind of comes down to quality. Like I normally, I'll do normally 3 sessions on the bike a week. I'll normally do, I normally like start the week with a bit of a recovery session, just get the body rolling after the weekend, because I keep all my endurance stuff to the end of the week. I'm a firm believer in training on heavy legs, right? So I do my bike, say my long bike on a Saturday, I'll do my long run on a Sunday, because you race on heavy legs. So it's the best way to simulate. Like if I asked you to go out and run a half marathon now, you'd run the half marathon. But if I asked you to go out and run the half marathon after doing 90k, the best way to simulate that is back-to-back days. So Saturday or Sunday, depending on whatever suits obviously an athlete's lifestyle, etc. You know, because obviously coaching is very specific. It has to be built around the athlete. Like a lot of people will say, "Oh, look, I'm a holistic coach. The plan is built around you." But at the end of the day, they're not. You know, at the end of the day, they're like, well, you need to go out and you need to cycle this. Yeah, you do need to cycle it, but if you can't physically get out and doing it, there's no point telling an athlete that they have to go out and do it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like this week, like I've cycled this week. What have I? I've cycled this week. I'll do an intervals bike in the morning, and then I'll do a long bike on Saturday. I'll probably do maybe 120k on Saturday, and then I'll come off the bike and I'll probably do an hour's run.
Right. And
then Sunday I'll probably do a half marathon, because I'm building up at the moment for Ironman Austria, which is the 14th of June. Right, which is only around the corner. Yeah, which is only around the corner. But like, I'm not going over to Austria with any expectations, because I have 2 targets this year. It's Ironman Duisburg, 70.3 in August, and that's one I'm going for PB. And then Italy, the one I'm going back from a bit of my redemption, I'm going for that for a PB as well. So Austria is just a country I'm going to just enjoy it. Like, my wife is coming over with me, and it's a beautiful country, you know, and it's going to be it's, sometimes when you're out on the bike course, you need to come up off the TT bars and just appreciate where you are, you know, because some of these countries, some of the countrysides are just amazing. Yeah.
And just in regards to when you're training now, you're 120k, are you doing like on the green? Are you going on a flat? Do you go out on the roads? Is it a mixture?
Well, I'm a firm believer in the safety of the Greenway. Greenway is a very safe place, all right, and I do get a bit of stick over the Greenway, but I'm a firm believer in the Greenway is safe. Like 80% of cyclists that are killed are hit from the rear, and that's a scary statistic, you know. So the Greenway is, I like it's boring, it's in a straight line, but it's safe. And like I do a lot of winter cycling out on the main roads, etc. But anything where I'm on my TT bike, I'm doing it on the Greenway, you know. But you can also, like, Austria isn't a very hilly course, you know, it's maybe 1,000 metres of climbing on it. You can easily simulate that with intervals, you know, so you can easily simulate that with surges. So you don't, there's this whole, again, we're going back to this old mentality, you know, you have to train hills if your course is hilly. Yeah, if you're going to Lanzarote and you've 2,500 metres, yeah, you got to do the hills. But if you've maybe 11 or 1,200 metres over 180k, you can get that same effort in a safer environment. And I'm a firm believer in safety. You know, that's a big thing, you know, because this is a hobby, and sadly I've heard a lot of people and just have had accidents over the years, you know, through no fault of their own, you know.
And would you do a lot of the turbo in the winter? Like
I would, yes, I do a lot. Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I like Zwift, and I'm a firm believer in that. But I'm starting to use Ruvi a bit at the moment, so I like that as well. It's kind of it's a great way to experience real world courses. So you can do them in like the courses are recorded, and you can cycle them if nothing else. I have an athlete going to Mallorca at the weekend, and I got him to do the Ruvi course twice. So you know where the aid stations are. You have an idea how severe the switchbacks are. It gives you, because when you're over there, you're not going to get to cycle the course, because it's because you're building up to your race day, etc. But it's an easy way. Yeah. Like, it's again going back to the athlete intelligence piece. It's very important to know your course. To know where your aid stations are. Like when I was in Valencia, they did an aid station. I don't know why they do this in Spain, but they always have aid stations on hills. So you're going up the hill and you're trying to have someone trying to hand you a water bottle, while you're up there. So it's So it's just about knowing the course, and it's about knowing what's ahead of you.
Gee, that's brilliant. Do they do stuff like that for running? Like different courses?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know you can run in Zwift, all right. I do a lot of running. I'm a firm believer in running inside as well. Again, I'll probably get a bit of stick over that as well, but I'm looking at longevity in the sport, and I'm looking at maintaining my knees and my hips as long as I can. And if someone wants to go off and do one Ironman in their life, they can run the roads to their heart's content. I do a lot of runs inside. Now I always do one run outside, normally my long run every week, but I'm probably the strongest. I'm probably at my fastest I've ever been running at the moment with this strategy that I'm doing. It works for me, and it works for people that I'm working with at the moment. So, and I'm particular about the running because I'm the run coach for Midlands Triathlon Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So every Friday morning, I'm doing the run sessions with them, and so it will be a big. It's great for me because it's enhancing my knowledge of running, because obviously I gravitate very much towards cycling. Like I'm a qualified bike mechanic and technician as well as a hobby. So I have that love for cycling. As for running, I don't have the love for. So I think if you put yourself out of your comfort zone, you'll be surprised what that you can do. And I do find that I do a lot of the sessions with the lads as opposed to just sitting on the sidelines watching them. So I'm actually like running with them, or I'm running the opposite side of the track with them, and I'm picking up certain cues that they're doing along the way. Because if you're on a 400 metre running track, no more than the one down Athlone here, it's very hard to see what a certain athlete is doing across the way, because when they're running to you, they're putting on the perfect form and they're putting in the effort. But if you're catching them, and that's what it's about. And it's about driving athletes on. It's about encouraging them. You know what I mean? So
Ambrose, a big thing that I find interesting is the nutrition side. Like an endurance athlete, how do you, like, I didn't even get the words out. Like, how do you even comprehend?
See, nutrition is I do only like to talk about stuff that I have a qualification in, right? Because there's a lot of people on social media, and and I do see it an awful lot. People are coaching. Like, coaching is one side of it. They do a few Ironmans, and next minute they're off coaching people. Coaching, you should never be coaching anyone unless you're a qualified coach, unless you have a proper certified qualification. But it's the same with nutrition as well. You shouldn't be talking about nutrition unless you have some sort of background in it. So nutrition is very much, and I'm talking from the perspective of having a qualification in that. So nutrition is very much, we can all get caught up in the hype. It has to be the big brands. You could go out and you do a long cycle, and a long cycle could cost you €12 with energy bars and all this sort of stuff. But nutrition is simple. It's simple carbohydrates, simple foods. Like when I go out on my long bike on Saturday, like, I won't bring any energy bars. I won't bring any things that are like, what I'll bring is I'll have my bottles, but I'll have a carb mix in my bottles. So I'll have a certain carb mix in that I know works for me. Everybody has a different rate. They always say you should work off 90 grams of carbs per hour, but really that's a very generic term. You should be working off what it's your carb against what your weight is. Everyone's carbs is different. So what I need to get around in my carb mix is different than your carb mix, because we're different heights, we're different we're different heights and we're different weights. But after that, then it could be something as simple as a bit of chocolate spread on bread, 3 of those. Like simple foods, like we spoke about it there off camera, like a Rice Krispie square. A Rice Krispie square is simple carbohydrates. You have the sugars in it as well, and it's about it's not all about having to go out and do a long ride and it costs you €20. Right. So it's about eating the right amount, because a lot of endurance athletes, when they get into this, they end up putting on weight, which is crazy. I know you might think, God, how could you end up putting on weight? But you end up overeating. Like, you end up eating on the bike, you end up coming off the bike, and you end up eating maybe the wrong foods coming off the bike. going for the like. There's many a time I've come off a bike and I've made a mess of my nutrition on the bike and end up going through half a packet of biscuits because you're just looking for that sugar hit, and it's the short term. It's like your body burns sugar first, but you're looking for it to burn something a little bit more than sugar because the sugar kick wears off quickly, So, but in fairness, I have my nutrition down. Like the race I had in Valencia there 2-3 weeks ago, like I had my nutrition absolutely dialed in perfectly on that, and I was really happy with that. But it's taken a lot of time. A lot of people go to races, they mess up their nutrition. They do say it's the fourth discipline, because no matter how good of an athlete you are, if you don't fuel correctly on race day, it's not worth anything to you. And you got to fuel on the bike. That's where you do all your fueling, because you can't fuel in the swim, obviously, because you're swimming, and on the run. So if you think about it, your stomach is somewhat stationary on the bike. You can absorb the food, you can get it into you, etc. But when you're on the run, you're not going to be able to eat too much solid foods on the run. That's why a lot of people revert to gels, etc. Because it's a lot more easy to consume. But your body will only absorb a certain amount of gels, and if you go above that, you could end up having a GI issue. You could end up being sick. There's a load of different things that end up happening. So it's trial and error. And I do always say to athletes I'm working with, it's always about getting it wrong in training. So you have a bad training day, so you have a right race day, So, and some people put a lot of pressure on themselves on race day. Like at the end of the day, race day is just your victory lap. It's just your lap going around. You're showing off to your family, look what I can do, look what I've done, etc. The hard days are put in months before that, like getting up at 4 a.m, getting your long swims in, getting all your sessions that you don't want to get done in,
Yeah. And what is a session? Like maybe 4 months? Is like a block? Is that maybe 4 or 5
Depends on
months?
Depends on what your fitness is. So everybody, like again, going back to me in 2014, did my first Ironman. My base fitness was at such a low level that it probably took me about 2 years to get up to that level where I could complete an Ironman. So everyone's fitness is different. Like a lot of people will talk, I want to do an Ironman in 4 or 5 months, but the body needs a time to adapt. And we spoke about that earlier. Like it needs time to adjust to the training load, and your body needs time to adapt.
And that includes obviously nutrition then.
Yeah, because your body has to get used to a certain amount. Like if you've never drank a carb mix in a water bottle, there's a different taste. Like I use a certain brand, and I'd have to put orange along in with it because it's a horrible taste. It tastes like powder basically. So it's not a nice taste, and your body needs to get used to that. But that's an easy way to get nutrition. But everybody's nutrition is different. I've cycled with people over the years. Like I could go through 3 bottles in a cycle, and they'd come home and they'd have gone through 1 bottle. So everybody's system is different. Like what you need to get over and around a race could be totally different than what I need to get around a race.
Of course, yeah. And is it like then with marathons? Like some people with the marathon, they're kind of carbing like a couple of days beforehand.
Yeah, well, you can get caught. Like if you carb too much, you'll end up GI issues the morning of the race. All right, and that's the last thing that you want to have a race morning. You don't want to have your issues with your bowels or your stomach or anything like that. But it's so some people think, I need to sit down the night before and have a big bowl of pasta. It's actually building up. It's actually 3 or 4 days out from a race day that you start building up your carbs, and it's simple carbs. Like it's not eating it's not eating complex carbs that your body's not used to. It's about eating simple carbohydrates that you're used to.
Okay.
Yeah, so simple stuff, like very simple, like white bread. Like you might need white bread, but white bread's a simple carb, and that's what you stick to. Like there's many a race morning or the day before a race, and I'd be sitting and watching my wife having a lovely breakfast, and I'm sitting there maybe having white bread and jam. But it's just about building that up in your system, because you're building up your stores in your body that you're going to rely on race day.
Right. And then is it kind of like a little eating often, like you're eating little bits during the day rather than say 3 meals a day?
Is this race day or is this building up?
Building up.
No, well, again, like there's no point you sitting down and having a large Domino's pizza, like a margarita pizza, if your system's not used to it, because that'll end up turning your system, or it'll end up making you sick. And like if you think about it, like if that's in your system and you start adding gels and all these other things to it, it becomes a bit of a dodgy mixture in your stomach, and that's what happens to people. But it's about simple foods, like the night before Valencia, I had very simple. I had a margarita pizza. That's what I had. Simple. It wasn't complicated. I don't like margarita pizzas, but it was just simple, and I knew that there was nothing there that was going to make me sick in that.
Okay, so that's important. And then obviously you would use gels on the run.
I use gels on the run. I use Precision Hydration. That's the product that I use on the bike. So I like, if you look at Florida, like my race nutrition, I did an Ironman in Florida in November. I had I had these little sweet bread rolls, and I had ham and turkey in them, and I had 6 of them. So every 45 minutes I was eating. So I have a little alarm on my bike. So every 45 minutes it goes off and tells me to eat, and every 20 minutes it tells me to drink. Because you forget. Because when you're on race day and you're feeling good, you know, when you get hungry, you've actually gone past the point. When you get hungry or thirsty, you've gone past the point where you should have eaten or you should have drank.
Right.
Yeah, and you need to keep reminding, even though like there's days where I'd be out and you'll be racing and you're eating and you have no appetite, but you have to get it into you, because if you let yourself go down too low, it's very hard to get back from that low level from a nutrition perspective to get back up to the level where you need to be performing at your optimum.
Right. So we're going back to the old ways where your food is just fuel.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's what.
Yeah, it's fuel. It's fuel, and what you put in. If you think about it, the most simplest way of doing it is what your carb loading earlier on in the week, and a few days before your race day, is what's building up your battery in your body. It's a very simple way of looking at it like that. That's building up what's in your system, and then you're relying on that on race day on top of your other nutrition on race day.
Okay, and what about electrolytes? Would you take electrolytes with you?
I would. I always take electrolytes, but unless you're doing a session in Ireland over 2 hours, you don't. Electrolytes are a big, massive scam, you know. And like there's this big cultural thing that you have to be like it's cold. It's like in Ireland, it's still cold. It's still nice, but it's still cold at the moment. But people are off taking electrolytes, and unless you actually know what your balance in your body is, so I would have went off and I would have got a perspiration analysis done, so I know how much sodium I'm losing. I know how much I sweat. Like I perspire a huge amount, but I don't lose a whole lot of sodium. So there's no point me overloading on electrolytes. So I would, again, I go back to, I use precision hydration. I would normally use half a tablet in each bottle. That's what I put in because whatever electrolytes you don't need, you'll obviously expel, but you don't want to be overloading on them either.
Yeah, so Jason, going back to what you're saying about getting the heart checked and, you know, getting your test for your nutrition, like that's a huge part that's kind of under the table that no one talks about.
No, like people don't talk about going getting your heart checked, all these sort of stuff. Like that's like anyone that talks to me about helping them to get down that red carpet of a race. The first thing I always say to them is like, you know, how's your health? You know, it's a question you don't want to ask people, but you have to ask them. You know, like because how you might coach somebody with maybe an issue. Maybe a small medical issue differs, you know, and that's what makes the plans. Like you can go to apps like Runa and all these other coaching platforms who just do generic. Like if I go into ChatGPT and I say to me, I want to win the Ironman World Championships, give me a program to do it. It'll spit out a program to me, but I'll be a week into it and I'll be injured because I'm not used to training at that level. And that's where a lot of people are going online and they're seeing a lot of these AI programs, and AI is only as good as what you put into it. So unless you're putting in a large amount of qualitative information about yourself, you're only going to get generic crap out of it. Yeah.
Welcome Ambrose back. We had to stop the last filming because our camera's overheated, which is very unusual in Ireland. So we're just back in just to finish off where we left off.
Brilliant.
So Ambrose, we're getting to the point where we were talking about sort of equipment. Now I know your big thing is the bike is your baby. What does it take what do you start off with and where does it go, or is that a minefield?
Yeah, I suppose, look, the biggest thing with the bike is everyone gets kind of caught up with, it's not all about the expensive bike. Don't get me wrong, a bike will make you marginally faster, but your engine will make you an awful lot faster. So you will get marginal gains with a more expensive bike, of course you will. But at the end of the day, if you have an expensive bike and you have a poor aerobic fitness, you're not going to excel all that much. So I suppose the working on your engine, which is your physical capacity, your aerobic or anaerobic capacity, that's a much better system, working on yourself, as opposed to thinking like that a new wheel set is going to make me quicker, or a faster frame is going to make me quicker, basically. So but the bike will, of course, it will help. It's not going to be the be all and end all, but I suppose you don't need to have an expensive bike either. Like a very entry, like getting in, there's a lot of barriers to this sport as it is, and I suppose you really want to be kind of looking at it from the perspective that that you're probably trying to keep the barriers down as low as possible. So like a good second-hand bike, 5-6 years old, once it's never been crashed, in good condition, will stand to you.
Okay. And then obviously if we're going up the ranks, if you're doing like a sprint to an Olympic, it's different. But if you're getting up to your Ironman level, which is a lot of mileage, you're probably kind of thinking of like where to put water bottles and fueling, like that sort of has to come into play as well, does it, if you're getting a bike?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of like, obviously your bike is your standard bike. Say if you're going for a road bike, like you could go for an aero road bike or a standard road bike, etc. And most bikes will have 2 bottle cages on it, but you can add 2 more onto the rear. You can add a water bottle cage if you've a TT bike. You can add it onto the front as well. But you have to remember, if you're spending 10,000 euros on a really expensive light bike and you're putting maybe all this extra weight on it, you're kind of doing maybe the whole bike a bit of an injustice then as well. So it's not about overloading it with 2 bottle cages on the rear. You have to remember you have to fuel for the race that you're training for. And obviously fueling for a full distance Ironman would be a lot more race specific as opposed to fueling for a sprint. Like a sprint, you should be able to do with 1 bottle as well. But you also have to be conscious of where you're going to carry your spares as well. Like where you're going to, if something happens, you get a puncture, where's your spares going to be? So I would normally carry, on the back of my Canyon bike, I have 2 bottles. I have a bottle cage on the back of it, and I put my spares in there as well. And I'd carry 2 bottles normally on the bike. But I also built into the bike is a hydration system built into the frame, and there would be a hydration tube coming up out of the frame onto the TT bars. So that's designed kind of for that. But on my other road bikes, I'd normally be just running maybe two bottle cages on it, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long, just as you just mentioned there that you have like spares, obviously, because you never think of like, how long would it take you now to change if you had a puncture? Something like that?
Well, see, what I normally do is, now again, I'm coming probably from the perspective a little bit different, that as a hobby, I'm a qualified bike mechanic and technician. So I'm coming from the perspective that all my tubes, I'd have them set up in a way that I'd have the core taken out of them. I'd have a little bit of sealant put into them. So it's the sealant, the anti-puncture sealant that you'd normally put in a normal tyre. So a lot of my bikes, I'd run tubes in them because I'm more comfortable changing tubes. But the anti-puncture tyres with the seal that has the anti-tube tyres has the sealant in it, I would put a bit of that in my tubes. Now, it's not recommended, but it just means that if you get a puncture, a small little bit of a nick in the tube, that it'll seal it as well. But it would depend on, it depends, because panic is probably the thing that slows it all down. So when you're on the side of the road, you're racing, you want to put a good effort in, you're probably better off just taking a little bit of time just to not to panic when you're changing the tyre. And just give yourself a little bit of extra time, basically, to do it. But there's loads of little tricks and hacks, like that, as I was saying about the tubeless tyres. I don't run tubeless tyres, but on my wife's bike, she runs tubeless tyres because she prefers to have the confidence to know that if something happens, I'm a little bit more old school. I like to have my tubes there as well, and I'd like to switch them out. But I normally find you'd want to be very unfortunate on race day to have a mechanical with a well-serviced bike. So you service a bike, keep it well maintained, change your tyres, etc. Don't scrimp on your tyres, and you'd normally find that it would normally pay off you on race day. I've never had, touch wood now, I've never had a puncture at an Ironman event on a bike because I've always made sure that my bike prior to race is either I'm servicing it or I bring it into my local bike shop, get them to have a look at it, and I'd always put good quality tyres on it.
Okay, so there's a lot in, obviously. There's a lot to it, depending on.
Yeah, like if you're training for a race and you spent 6 to 8 months training for a race and you've put all your money into it, etc. You've invested a lot. You don't want to be let down by scrimping on €60 for a tyre or for a service. And there's a lot to be said for, you don't want to be over on race day at, a lot of these events have places where you can get your bike serviced and worked and done some work on it, but there's a lot to be said for your local bike shop who knows your bike and you have a good relationship with. I'd have an excellent relationship with the local bike shop in town, and they would do a lot of work to say I wouldn't be able to do myself. So.
Okay, brilliant. So, and then just while you're on the bike, then what kind of mileage are you putting in, for a week?
So mileage is not. There's a very old, so I had a coach years ago and it was all about mileage and it was all about junk miles, and that's how I probably describe it. Mileage is it's quality versus quantity. So when I coach my athletes, it's quality sessions. So I was supposed to do a 4-hour bike session on Saturday. Now, it was very much a long zone 2 bike, nothing major to it, but I couldn't do it because I had something at home, so I had to stay at home for it. So what I did is I converted it to a 2-hour turbo, but it was a quality turbo session with specific goals in that session. Right. So it's very much like you have to do, when you're racing, say going for the full distance Ironman or the 70.3, you know, you can't be out cycling 20, 30 kilometres. You have to be doing close enough to where your race distance is. But that's, like, I've heard some people and they're off doing 8-9 hour cycles. That's just crazy. You know, you have to keep it specific. Like, I did 4 full distance Ironmans last year. I never cycled over 150k on any of those cycles. And I finished the year with a PB I finished the year with a sub 6 hour bike. In Florida. So it's about quality sessions and not getting caught up in this notion that you have to do junk miles. You know, it's about every session you should have a focus, and there should be a goal and an outcome for that session. And whatever your goal or outcome of it is, if you've only an hour to train, like I coach some of the athletes I'm coaching, if they might only have an hour to train, like, you have to be specific and you have to make that session about quality, as opposed to saying you have to do a 3-hour bike session.
Right, that makes sense. And then just coming to for people looking at this video that never done an Ironman before, probably might have tweaked a bit of interest, or might have even interest into triathlon. What would you suggest as someone, as a coach and as an Ironman athlete, for someone that wants to take that up and take it to the next level, what would your suggestions be? Well,
I'd say the first thing is, I made a mistake that I went in and I did the full distance Ironman straight away. All right. Well, I tried to do it. I DNF'd at my first full distance Ironman. Like, I am a firm believer that everybody has the ability to do anything that they want to do, but some people's bodies just take a little bit longer to get to that point. So for myself, it took me about 2 years of training before I could get my body to a tolerance and get it to a point where it adapted to the training load. You know, because a lot of people, when they start training first, they get a lot of injuries. You know, because their body needs to adapt to what the training is, and it takes time to adapt to what the training is. So I would recommend start off gradually. Start off, if you've never done a triathlon before, start off with a try. You don't have to be caught up with the social media lies. You go onto Instagram, you see this Ironman video and it looks this, that and the other. You don't have to be caught up in that. At the end of the day, you're only seeing the good side on it. On social media, you know, you're not seeing the training sessions. You're not seeing the training sessions the athlete doesn't want to do. Start with the try, then go to the sprint, and then move your way on up then to the Olympic, to the 70.3. If that's what your goal is. You know, you don't have to get to the Ironman race distance. Like, Ironman is a brand, Challenge is a brand, ultimately, but it's the distance that you can go off and you could do that. You don't have to do a race with a brand. Like, you can go off, in Ireland there's loads of great races around the country, and I suppose just work up through that and get a right coach or get a right system that works for you, and just take time to allow your body to adapt, and don't think that, I've done a marathon or two, I can easily add that into it, make an Ironman out of it. It takes time, you know, and it takes time for your body to adapt and to allow your body to adapt to that.
And then again, we're talking about the equipment stuff. Start off something small, second-hand bike, get a sprint done, and then
don't go in and buy the Canyon Speedmax for 13,000 straight away. Now, if you want to buy it, definitely do, but it's not needed. At the end of the day, the best equipment that you have is your engine, and it's your own body. And you can have all the equipment in the world, but if you have a poor engine that's not trained correctly, you're not going to be able to maximize your results. And expensive bike, expensive wetsuit, carbon plated shoes, they're not worth anything to you then if you haven't got the engine behind it.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Ambrose, thanks so much.
Thanks, Darren,
for coming in and explaining the world of the Ironman to us, because it's something that we've all seen, and we're all a little bit, sounds a bit mad.
It's nothing to be scary about. You know, to countries, and Ireland unfortunately doesn't have any Ironman competitions at the moment, and hopefully that'll change in the future. But as it stands at the moment, Europe is full of them, and it's a brand, it's a business, but you get a race experience from it. But then again, there's plenty of these distance races in Ireland and the UK that don't have to be Ironman, and you get great race experiences from them as well. So it is the achievement of the race distance, it's not the achievement of the brand.
Right. And going forward then for you, I know you do specifically Ironman, but would you go and do other bits and pieces?
See, the reason I do Ironman is I like the brand experience. I've done a lot of races, like I've done Challenge, I've done races here in Ireland, and I very much like the fact that if I go to Ironman, in America, I get a certain experience. If I go to Ironman in the UK, I get the same experience. And I like that. And from my time when I was a race director and a national series race director in Ireland for races in my old tri club, my big emphasis, and I would have had a lot of issues with committee members at the time wanting to try and save money, scrimp on stuff, etc. Because race experiences, you want to give the athlete the best race experience. You want to give them the best T-shirt. You want to give them a good medal, good food afterwards. You want to have their experience as much as possible. But some people don't see that. Some people they're trying to minimise the race experience. And at the end of the day, you're paying for an Ironman. It's not cheap, and they're only getting more expensive, but you get a certain quality of race. And I'm at the point in my life where it's quality of a race that I want, as opposed to going to a race where they're trying to save money on a cheap T-shirt or save money on a cheap medal.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because you're putting the effort in, and you're paying, going to a good hotel, I suppose.
Yeah, like it is triathlon is a very elitist sport. It is, unfortunately, it's a very expensive sport. There's a lot of barriers to get into it, But at the end of the day, as I keep saying, there's amazing races around the country here in Ireland that you can do the 70.3 distance, the full 140.6 distance. You don't always have to get caught up in the social media hype. Now, fair enough, my social media page has Ironman in it, but that's my model that I like. But that's not to say in 10 years' time that it could be maybe the T100, or it could be the challenge races, or maybe something like that.
Brilliant. Fantastic. We'll be following you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Darrell.
Wherever you go.
Thanks for inviting me in.
Not at all, and thanks for giving your knowledge and giving your time.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Ambrose.